I am 86. Last Sunday, I sat in the exact center of my own living room, surrounded by 3 generations of my bloodline, and realized I had ceased to exist. The house was full, yet the silence was absolute. There were no overlapping conversations, no arguments over the television channel, no one asking how my aching joints were faring in the autumn chill. There was only the soft, rhythmic tapping of thumbs against glass and the cold, blue glow illuminating the faces of my children and grandchildren. The air in the room was thick with a strange, invisible current of data flying rapidly back and forth, entirely bypassing me. Suddenly, my daughter, sitting on the armchair to my left, burst into a loud, sudden laugh. 2 seconds later, my grandson, sprawled on the rug at my feet, snickered in response. They did not look at each other. They did not speak a single word aloud. They were sharing a joke, a memory, or a piece of news in a digital space I could not enter. A family group chat floating somewhere in the ether. I sat right between them, resting on the floral sofa I bought with my late husband 40 years ago, clutching a warm mug of tea, but to them I was continents away. I am the matriarch of this family, yet I have been quietly downgraded to a piece of background furniture in my own home. We have been erased from the narrative while we are still breathing. The cruelest death is not when your heart stops beating, but when the people you love forget you are still in the room. I close my eyes, and the sterile silence of the living room is momentarily shattered by the ghosts of Sundays past. I remember this exact room 30 years ago. It wasn't just loud. It was a living, breathing entity. There was the heavy, satisfying thud of the morning newspaper hitting the front porch, followed by the sharp, earthy scent of black ink as we spread the broadsheet pages across the coffee table. I remember my late husband wrestling with the tangled, yellow coiled cord of the wall phone in the hallway, his voice booming with laughter as he spoke to his brother across the country. The kitchen was a chaotic battlefield of flour, roasting garlic, and clinking silverware. Love and connection used to require effort, friction, and presence. They had a physical weight that anchored us to one another. We passed heavy porcelain bowls hand to hand. We argued passionately over the television volume, and we looked directly into each other's eyes to see if a smile was genuine or masking a bad day. Now, the Sunday feast arrives in a brown paper bag, summoned silently by a thumb pressing a glowing interface. A nameless stranger leaves it at the front door without a word. My family eats with one hand, their eyes anchored entirely to their screens, chewing mechanically in the quiet. The symphony of our messy, beautiful human lives has been muted, replaced by the frictionless efficiency of a world that no longer needs us to speak. I sit there, the porcelain of my teacup warming my frail hands, and I feel a desperate, childish urge rise in my throat. I want to lean forward, interrupt the tapping, and ask, "What is so funny? Who sent that picture? Please, let me see." I want to be part of the warmth that is circulating just inches away from my face, but the words turn to ash before they reach my lips. I swallow them down, along with a bitter sip of lukewarm tea. I do not ask, because I remember the last time I did. I remember holding out my outdated tablet, utterly paralyzed by a flashing security notification that felt like an eviction notice from the modern world. I remember my daughter taking it from my trembling hands. Not with malice, no, but with that heavy, unmistakable sigh. The sigh that silently screams, "Not again." Her thumbs flew across the glass in a blur, dismissing warnings and updating software with a frantic speed my aging eyes couldn't even track. "There, Mom. It's so easy. Just press this next time," she said, handing it back without making eye contact. But it wasn't easy. It was a foreign language I was too tired to learn, and her swift impatience was a sharp blade slicing through my pride. I realized then that my questions do not invite connection. They only invoke exhaustion. So I choose silence. I choose the quiet dignity of my own isolation over the agonizing humiliation of becoming a chore to the very children I once taught how to walk. I watch them smile at their screens, and I pretend I am simply resting my eyes rather than drowning in a room full of my own blood. Just yesterday, the kitchen faucet developed a steady, rhythmic leak. I heard my eldest grandson wrestling with it under the sink, grunting in frustration as his wrench clanked sharply against the pipes. I walked into the kitchen, leaning heavily on my cane, feeling a rare, sudden spark of purpose ignite in my chest. For 60 years, I maintained a household. I know the exact quirk of a stripped washer, the precise amount of torque needed for a stubborn bolt, the patience required to fix what is broken instead of throwing it away. I opened my mouth to guide his hands, eager to pass down a tiny, practical fragment of my life's work. But before I could speak a single word, a cheerfully upbeat voice echoed from beneath the cabinet. He had propped his glowing phone against the dish soap, watching a 60-second video of a stranger halfway across the world fixing the exact same leak. "Don't worry, Grandma, I just Googled it," he muttered, his eyes glued to the screen, never once looking up to see me standing there. I stood in the doorway, feeling that brief spark of purpose extinguish into cold, gray ash. In my time, wisdom was a precious, tangible currency, handed down from calloused hands to eager ones. A father teaching a boy to change a tire in the fading evening light, a mother guiding her daughter's uneven stitches. Now, all my accumulated decades, the trials, the errors, the hard-won survival, are rendered utterly bankrupt by a search bar. I have become a vast, silent library that no one visits anymore, because the world has decided that instant data is far superior to lived experience. When every answer can be downloaded in a second, the slow, beautiful art of needing one another becomes a forgotten language. I sometimes leave the suffocating quiet of the living room, putting on my coat and gripping my cane, stepping out into the neighborhood I have known for half a century. I go hoping to find the world I remember, a world that still requires a voice, a polite nod, a shared, sympathetic glance over a cup of morning coffee. But stepping outside only confirms my deepest unspoken fear. The isolation of my sofa has infected the streets. I walk past the bus stop, where a row of young people sit shoulder to shoulder, completely entombed in noise, canceling headphones. Their faces are washed in the exact same pale blue light I just left behind in my home. I step into the corner bakery, craving the simple, warm exchange of a good morning and the clink of coins passed across the counter. Instead, there is no cashier greeting me, only a plastic stand bearing a square, black and white pixelated maze, a QR code, and a sterile sign commanding me to order through an application. Even at the pharmacy, the kind woman who used to ask about my arthritis has been replaced by a row of towering automated self-checkout machines that bark robotic, flashing instructions at me. I stand there, clutching a bottle of aspirin, feeling the cold, indifferent stare of a machine tracking my slow, uncertain movements. The message society broadcasts is deafening in its clarity: do not speak, do not linger, do not interact. We are no longer citizens of a shared community. We are solitary operators of machines. The physical world has simply become a massive, outdoor extension of my family's exclusive group chat. We have engineered a world so flawlessly convenient that it no longer requires the messy, beautiful inconvenience of a human soul. Last Tuesday, the silence finally broke me. In a moment of quiet, aching desperation, I decided I would simply buy my way back into my family. I put on my best wool coat, took a taxi downtown, and walked into a gleaming, brightly lit mobile phone store. It felt like stepping onto a spaceship, sterile, white, and humming with artificial life. A young salesman, his words a rapid-fire blur of gigabytes, pixels, and cloud storage, handed me their newest, most expensive device. As I took it, I didn't see a piece of technology. I saw a heavy, sleek glass key. This was the toll I had to pay to enter the family group chat. This was the price of hearing my grandchildren's laughter again. But it was so cold, and my arthritic hands were so tired, As I tried to grip its smooth, frictionless edges, my fingers betrayed me. The device slipped. The sharp crack of the phone hitting the pristine tile floor sounded like a gunshot in the quiet store. The salesman gasped, but I did not move. I just stood there, looking down at the floor. In the spiderweb of shattered black glass, I caught my own reflection. I saw an 86-year-old woman. I saw the deep, beautiful lines around my eyes, etched by decades of real laughter and real tears. And suddenly, looking at that fragmented, distorted mirror, I felt a profound wave of shame. I was stripping away my own hard-earned dignity, humiliating myself in a brightly lit store, just to beg for digital scraps of affection from the very people I had taught how to speak. The fever broke. I realized how tragic it was to mourn a world that required me to erase myself just to belong to it. I slowly reached into my purse, handed the bewildered clerk enough cash to cover the damage, and turned my back on the counter. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the warm, golden afternoon sunlight. I was finally done running after a train that had already left the station. True dignity is not found in frantically chasing a world that wants to leave you behind, but in having the grace to stand perfectly still and let it go. When I opened the front door to my home, the scene was perfectly, tragically unchanged. They were still there, my bloodline, anchored to the familiar cushions of the floral sofa, bathed in the same synthetic bluish light. The silence still hung heavy in the air, punctuated only by the soft tap-tap of glass. But as I slowly unbuttoned my wool coat and hung it in the hallway, I realized something profound had shifted within the quiet architecture of my chest. The suffocating weight of my own irrelevance was entirely gone. I walked into the living room, my cane making a dull, rhythmic thud against the hardwood floor. I looked at my daughter's bowed head and my grandson's furiously typing thumbs, and for the very first time, I did not feel the agonizing sting of exclusion. The invisible, desperate tether that had bound my self-worth to their digital approval had been severed on the floor of that brightly lit mobile store. I walked right past the sofa, not pausing to catch a scrap of conversation, not lingering in the hopes of a sudden shared glance. I was no longer waiting for a notification that would never arrive. I was no longer an exiled ghost haunting the edges of a group chat I couldn't comprehend. By accepting my obsolescence in their world, I had miraculously reclaimed my own. I had finally stepped off the relentless, exhausting treadmill of modern relevance, and in doing so, I found a deep, unshakable silence that belonged entirely to me, not the cold silence of being ignored, but the rich, golden silence of simply being alive. To be invisible to a room full of people who cannot even see the world around them is not a curse. It is a quiet, beautiful emancipation. I slide open the glass door to the backyard, leaving the sterile, air-conditioned glow of the house behind me. The late afternoon air hits my face, crisp, damp, and wonderfully real. I walk over to the ancient, overgrown rose bush leaning against the wooden fence. My husband planted it the year our eldest daughter was born. Slowly, ignoring the familiar ache in my knees, I kneel and plunge my bare hands into the cool, dark soil. It is messy, it is heavy, it is wonderfully, stubbornly physical. I press the dirt beneath my fingernails, feeling the jagged edge of a stray pebble and the soft resistance of a deep root. This soil does not require a password. This rose bush does not need a software update to bloom, nor does it crash when I touch it incorrectly. It only asks for time, water, and the warmth of a human hand. In a world increasingly obsessed with the instant and the untouchable, there is a profound, quiet rebellion in cultivating something that demands patience. Later, I sit on the porch swing with a weathered, dog-eared paperback I have read a dozen times. I run my thumb over the textured, yellowing pages, breathing in that comforting, unmistakable scent of vanilla, dust, and aging paper. Inside the house, my family is swiping through thousands of images they will forget by tomorrow morning. But out here, I am holding a physical anchor to reality. I am relearning how to breathe in a space where things have weight, texture, and consequence. The things that truly sustain the human spirit cannot be minimized, muted, or swiped away with a careless flick of a finger. The greatest rebellion in a world obsessed with the virtual is to sink your bare hands into the earth and fall deeply in love with what is real. Later that evening, as the sun dips below the horizon, I stand by the glass door and look back into the living room. The only light comes from the frigid blue illumination of their devices, casting a ghostly pallor over the faces of my children and grandchildren. Before today, this sight would have carved a hollow, familiar ache into my chest. Now, I watch them not with sorrow, but with a strange, profound pity. I see how their eyes dart frantically across the glass, how their thumbs twitch, constantly reacting to a relentless current of alerts, distant tragedies, and hollow, fleeting dopamine. They are trapped in a raging, invisible river, swept away by a current so fast they cannot even catch their breath. They are terrified that if they stop scrolling for even a single second, they will be forced to sit in the quiet company of their own minds. I used to weep because I was isolated from their digital reality. But as I stand here, smelling the damp earth of my garden and feeling the cool evening breeze on my skin, I realize a far greater, more terrifying truth. They are completely, hopelessly isolated from the physical one. They are missing the scent of the coming rain, the slow, beautiful darkening of the sky, the comforting rhythm of their own breathing. I am no longer a discarded artifact drowning in their waters. I have simply stepped out of the rapids. I am a quiet, peaceful observer, standing on the solid, unshakable shore, watching an entire generation drift away. We grieve our exclusion from their virtual universe, entirely blind to the quiet, devastating tragedy of their exile from the real one. So, to those of us sitting quietly on the edges of brightly lit rooms, holding on to the fading memories of a world that once required our hands, our voices, and our presence, hear me. Do not bow your heads in shame when a screen flashes an error you cannot understand. Do not apologize for your slowness in a society that is moving far too fast for its own good. We do not need to be upgraded. We do not need to shatter our own dignity just to fit into a cold glass box. We are the final witnesses to the symphony of the 20th century, the generations that built homes with our bare hands, wrote letters that smelled of ink and longing, and lobbed each other face to face without the mediation of a machine. We are not obsolete. We are the keepers of the flame for a lost era. We are the guardians of a time when connection had weight, when patience was a virtue, and when human wisdom was a treasure passed down, not a piece of data to be downloaded. Be proud of your wrinkles. Trace them with your fingertips, and know that they are not signs of a system failure. They are the beautiful, intricate maps of a life deeply and tangibly lived. They are the physical proof that we survived the glorious, messy, heartbreaking reality of being truly human. Let them scroll. Do not mourn the world that left you behind. Stand tall, for you are the magnificent monument of a time when we still knew how to look each other in the eye. I day